All right, good money morning. We are live. What's up, Andrew? Yo, Andrew, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but there's a lot of lag, and I'm not sure if the viewers are getting this.
Well, I got a good connection. Hopefully that cleans itself up, but we'll proceed regardless. We're picking up where we left off the other day with budgeting and getting into some more advanced stuff beyond the basics. Let's just hop right into this. If you guys didn't see last week's broadcast, you should go back one cast and watch that before this one, because we start with the basics of budgeting. This one will kind of drill down into some of the separate line items when it comes to managing your budget properly and where you can free up some cash. Andrew, go back to your screen and put up the budget sheet for me if you can. And then I'll throw it up on the cast so everybody can see it. Let's see what we're talking about here. Can you hear me, man?
I got you. Can you see it?
Yeah, okay, here we go. All right, so you guys should be able to see that up on the screen. What are the common areas that people make mistakes on when it comes to budgeting? I think the area that they can control the most is going to be with the expenses. If you're on if you have a job, you can't do much about changing your monthly income unless you've got commission or bonuses you can earn by putting in extra time and making more money. But let's just assume that that's fixed and deal with the component of the expenses part. So what goes out every month? What area have you seen in your course of work where people have good opportunities to improve cash flow, or where do you see them make the most mistakes when it comes to their budget?
The biggest mistakes have been, and I think will continue to be, the amount of money people are paying out in vehicle costs. And that's primarily your financing payment, your loan payment. Generally speaking, it's a collective household. So there's two individuals living in the household, two adults, generally speaking, with a child or two or three. And therefore, there's generally two car payments. And, there's an example I'm going to just point to. I think it was a few days ago, mid this week, there was a client of ours that has two vehicle payments, a trailer payment, and what was the other one? A boat loan payment. Yes, boat loan and a trailer payment. So collectively, between the two vehicles, the trailer and the boat wasn't an extravagant boat. I think the loan on the boat was roughly $20,000. So it wasn't like it was $100,000 boat or anything. Was about $2,400 per month in expenditures. And I looked at that and I thought to myself, what are you doing? There's really no reason for you to go out and
How much was the income? Like, what was the
collective income was about 8,000 collective.
So 2,400 divided by 7,000. That's 34% of their total income.
Yeah, on
that's pretty
two
heavy.
cars. Yeah, two cars, a boat, and a trailer. Now, they also had a mortgage, and the mortgage payments, I can't remember what the mortgage payments off the top of my head were, but they had a mortgage. They had, I think they had two children. But with that being said, vehicles or toys seem to be the biggest cost. And sometimes what you see, and in this example that I'm referring to, they had, one of the individuals had got a vehicle loan. It was a truck loan approximately a year ago, and for whatever reason they decided to trade that truck in a year later and go get themselves another truck, another pickup. And this pickup that they financed the second time around 1 year later was for $100,000. That's how much the loan was on that second pickup. They just traded in to get a new one 1 year later.
These are all financed, they're not leased.
These are all financed. So
okay, so let me ask you this question. So why did they have two pickup trucks?
Well, they had one. They traded it in for another. They claimed that the reason they traded it in is the first one that they got wasn't sufficient for their needs. So they went and got a second one, and they traded in the first one for the new one. It was a year later, and I thought to myself, you've got this pickup for 1 year. You've still probably got 3 to 5 years left on the financing.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than just dealing with what you've got, you're trading it in, and you're not incurring the same size loan, because the previous loan was 60 grand. They went and got a new vehicle for $100,000, so they went up $40,000.
So
So
hold on a sec. So their annual income is $84,000 if they're making $7,000 a month, but they spent $100,000 on a truck, on a pickup truck. So again, my question is, what is the use case for this pickup truck? Like, why do they have to have this truck? Does this guy own a tow truck company and he needed a $100,000 dually with like a fifth wheel so he can tow cars that get pulled over as a part of his business? Like, what was the reason for a $100,000 pickup truck?
I don't have specifics, but I do know they have the boat and the trailer, so I'm assuming they wanted.
Well, you don't
to-
need much of a truck to tow a $20,000 boat. I mean, they're not that heavy. You can tow it with a Jeep or something, probably.
I'm just relaying what I know of the file, and that's what I have.
I know, but this is but like this is the critical eye that I want to apply to this. So I don't care if you want to call me the bad cop or the asshole or whatever, but the point being here is I'm trying to get some clarity on why somebody would, with an $84,000 a year income, spend and that's just on one truck, mind you. So what was the other vehicle? You said it was another pickup truck?
No, the other vehicle is a Jeep.
Okay.
So I don't know, Grand Cherokee, Cherokee,
Do
whichever.
both the people in the household work?
They do, yes.
Okay, and their combined income is $84,000 a year. And what do they do for a living?
I don't know what they do for a living, but that 84,000, Richard, is obviously net. So their gross incomes are probably around the $150,000 mark collective. But once they have their deductions, they're on roughly $7,000 to $8,000, which is where you're getting that $84,000.
Okay, so they're taking home $84,000. Still, the notion of buying a $100,000 pickup truck doesn't make any sense. The only use case that you could argue for that, and part of the reason why they have accumulated the debt, is as a result of some bad choices. The first being is spending that amount of money on a brand new pickup truck unless you absolutely need it. So use case might be they have a horse farm. They need a diesel dually with a fifth wheel attachment so they can tow their trailer around and compete in exhibitions or whatever. Maybe he owns a tow truck company and he needs the truck to, or he's self-employed and he's a company of one and he has a tow truck and he needs to tow. So he needs a high-end pickup truck that's got a lot of torque that can pull with. Aside from that, I mean, if those things are not present, I see no argument whatsoever for indebting yourself to that degree with that level of income. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
I'm not defending these individuals. What I'm saying is that's the scenario that we see more often than not is it's wasteful spending on vehicles.
So this is where you need to apply the critical eye to your monthly expenses and ask yourself, do I really need this? Can you get away with a 10-year-old F-150, with a gas motor for your purposes? Do you really need a pickup truck? I mean, is it a extravagant lifestyle sort of statement because you live up north and you want to have a pickup truck like everybody else has a pickup truck when you can really get away with a Hyundai or a Kia, for example, right? I mean, if you're not using it for work, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So these are the areas that I think people need to question, for themselves and maybe challenge their partners if it's necessary. But that's an excellent example of extravagant spending with relatively common income, right?
Right, agreed. And that's why I wanted to start with the vehicles being the most common area of, just unreasonable spending power or unreasonable spending use of your money. And that example,
that's $2,400 a month. You could easily bring that down to under $1,000 a month by making more intelligent choices if you don't need those vehicles for work purposes. If you're using them for work purposes, they should be paying for themselves, which in this case, I would argue they wouldn't be because something somewhere on the business side of things is not going well. Okay, so let's skip over the car or the transportation component, because this is a classic example that's been seen many, many times. There's no point on beating this dead horse. What would you say would be second as far as poor management with monthly expenses?
I would say it's a collective second place or a tie second place for the cost of telecommunications. So your cell phones, your internet, your cable, your home phone package, all that collective for the family is probably tied second place with the amount of money people are spending on what we deem on the financial capacity assessment form as the entertainment box. Mm-hmm. And that's where you would put your costs for smoking habits, costs for entertainment habits such as drinking habits or gatherings or parties. Mm-hmm. So those are the two areas which we see are the second most lavish spending. It's easy to talk about the telecommunications first because the packages that providers can offer to you, depending on where you live, different provinces have different providers. And if you live more remote, the general consensus is the cost of your internet package or cable package might be a lot higher because it's more remote than if you were working or living in, say, Toronto, for example, or Vancouver. But what we see is a lot of people spending money in the $300-400, sometimes even $500 range for telecommunications. And it's like, well, you don't really need to be spending that kind of money on a TV cable package or internet package. As an example, my cable internet package at my residence is about $160 inclusive of taxes. And that's a internet package that's unlimited for the, I guess, for the data or for the upload download. And for the cable package, it's a pretty, I'd say mid-range package. So there's quite a few channels on there, some movie channels and whatnot. So for $160 for internet and cable, that should be sufficient for most people. When I see people spending $400 or $500, it's like, well, you've really gone overboard.
Are you seeing people spend $400 to $500 on internet, cable, cell phone? Like, do you see statements coming in that do amount to that?
I don't see statements that amount to that because we don't get into the deep dive with clients about providing proof of all their expenditures where we say, here, give me a copy of your Rogers bill or your Bell bill.
Okay.
But on the financial form, when they fill it out and they put down there $300 here, $100, $150 for phone, and it all adds up to say $400 or $500, that's where you see the numbers. And now sometimes the numbers can be justifiable. For example, let's just assume it's a household of 5 people and there's 5 cell phones. The children are, say, 10, 12, and 15. Now, while I personally don't agree with giving a 10-year-old a cell phone, a lot of families do. So if there's 3 cell phones at, say, $60 for the children, and then 2 adult cell phones of $100, give or take, well, there alone is roughly $180, $283, it's $380 in cell phones. So it all depends on what kind of lifestyle you live and if you are a believer in cell phone products for the children, and if so, what kind of products and plans you're giving those children. But there are plans where you can go as low as $25 and $40 a month with minimized data, minimized telecommunications for the children. And if you add those three of them at $40, it's $120, and then the 2 adults can possibly go for $150 collective. So it's $270 on cell phones. Well, I still think that's a lot, and it all depends on the children's age and whatnot. But that should be more that it's a better way of saving some cash is by altering your plans to save some money in your budget, as we've done some shows on budgeting previously. That's one way to do it, is looking at ways to eliminate or lower your expenditures to telecommunications and your providers. A home phone may not be needed if everyone in the household has a cell phone. There's no need to pay anywhere between $30 to $60 for a home phone. There's just really no reason for that.
Yeah, let me just chime in here because this is something that really grinds my gears on 2 levels. One is when people spend huge amounts of money on cable television, $150, $200 plus a month plan so they can access everything, to sit at home all day long or in their spare time, rotting their brain away, consuming media that serves you no purpose. Not only do you pay $150, $200 a month to watch bullcrap, but you're also paying to be served advertisements by marketers that are being compensated by the cable companies for placing those ads. So you're paying to have your mind manipulated. You're paying to watch news, which is mainstream media, which is basically bullcrap. It serves you no purpose. You can turn it off and ask yourself, have I learned anything today? Have I leveled up? Has this made me feel better? They've done lots of studies on this, and they've plugged in all kinds of sensors to people watching news, and conclusively by the end of watching an hour of news, everybody feels like shit. They don't feel better about themselves. They don't feel uplifted. They don't feel positive. And they've paid to consume that nonsense. And they've also been sold other crap that they probably don't need to buy through marketing, which is ad placement. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, if you have young children, like I've seen children as young as 6 or 7 or 8 having cell phones. If you have young children, you have no business giving them a cell phone. Not only is it an unnecessary expense, but their minds simply cannot comprehend how to deal with the information that's presented to them in that screen, and it's highly addictive. Go read some couple books by Dr. Leonard Sachs. So Leonard spelled exactly like you'd think it's spelled. Last name is S-A-X. He does a lot of, he's put out quite a few publications, and and studies on children and psychology around children. And he's adamant that you shouldn't give kids cell phones under the grade of grade 8. Now, some parents will do it. It's been done. Once it's been done, it's pretty hard to take that away. But you should approach this from a logical perspective of, do I need to spend money on this? Is this really serving me? Like, does this benefit me, my family, my kids? Is this a good use of my time? And the answer to all those things is to minimize your expenditures for cell phones, for, consuming media on cable television, even consuming social media, Facebook and stuff like that is not a very good use of your time. I'm going to get off my soapbox and stop the rant, but let's go back. So what's the third item? Let's do one more.
The next one that people have, it's probably the biggest cost is your rent or mortgage payment. That's probably most people's biggest expenditure on a monthly basis. Now, with that, it's almost impossible to change what you're paying by staying at the exact same place you're currently in. So you use the rent as an example. If you currently have a rent payment like we see on the form here for $960, you won't be able to change that by staying where you are. The only way you'd be able to change that expense is by leaving where you're currently living and finding something at a better monthly cost for yourself. And that would mean you have to go out, you look for it in specific places that are advertising rental accommodation, and as long as it might be closer to your work. So for example, in this situation, there's no gas expenses here, but if this person was paying $960 in rent, plus $500 a month in gasoline because they were driving back and forth to work, say an hour each way, you might want to look at the place where you're living and say, okay, if I move closer to my workplace and maybe my rent goes from say $960 to $1,200, but now my gas goes from $500 down to $100, you're still saving money that way. So there are things you can do with your rent, perhaps potentially leaving where you are and getting a different accommodation closer from where you are, maybe further from where you are, and spend more in gas but lower your rent drastically. That's one option. For those that hold mortgages, if you're in a fixed term, you can't do anything about that either. But there are ways to lower your payment if you're on a variable mortgage rate. And there's also things that you can do, such as thinking to yourself, well, if my mortgage is $1,500 and I have all this house and it's just me and my wife and the children have just left, maybe there's a possibility of you downgrading. Maybe there's a possibility of you selling that property, and rather than having a mortgage at $1,500, maybe you're able to get yourself a mortgage at $1,000 or less, or maybe it's $1,200. So there are ways that you can lower your cost to accommodation, and that is usually most people's biggest expenditure. So that's one of the easiest ways is to find money in your cash flows or in your budget is by doing something about your accommodation. It is more difficult though, because you're usually locked into some kind of lease arrangement, or if you're in a mortgage, but those are ways that you can try to find some money in your accommodation.
I'll say this. I mean, I don't want to spend too much time on the living expenses, but we've now moved to an era where at-home work is pretty common for the vast majority of companies out there, unless they've got an exemption for, exclusion on the COVID stay-at-home protocols. But most companies will let you work at home right now. So if you're spending a ton of money living in a larger city, move to a more rural area, put the kids in a new school zone. Your cost of housing expenses will go down dramatically. It's not necessary to live in large urban built up areas anymore just to be close to work, because for the most part, you can work from home. And for the most part, companies are going to start vacating their office spaces, giving up leases, selling them to let employees work from home on a longer term basis. I think you're going to see a more permanent move to at-home work on a go-forward basis. Anyway, so those are the top three on that list. I put a survey out in the community tab of the YouTube channel. If you guys can click over to that and just take it, just give me some feedback on what it is that you're looking to do this year with money, credit, and debt. And let me go over to the banners over here. Here we go, the ticker. So if you are in Canada and you have over $15,000 worth of credit card debt, you can learn how to legally reduce it by 50 to 70% and get debt free in 4 years. Just go to totaldebtfreedom.ca, fill out the form, and after you fill out the form, make sure you schedule a call with the representative so that you can get in and have a conversation, because a lot of people will just fill out the form and they forget about it and they don't recognize the number when they call. So if you're serious about it, you've got over $15,000 worth of debt and what you're doing isn't working, you're not paying it down, you've got more month at the end of the money, you've been doing it for 6 to 12 months and you're not seeing your balances get reduced, get a free quote. You can schedule in a call and they'll let you know what your best option is. If it's not our option, they'll send you off in the right direction totally for free. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up, Andrew, on the more advanced components of budgeting?
No, not at this point. I just want everyone to have a good weekend and keep safe.
Yeah. Be smart with your money, guys. Don't go throwing it around like it's, an unlimited resource. I get frustrated when I see somebody spending like 35% of their income on transportation or blowing like $300-400 a month on cable and telecommunications and cell phone. Be smart about it so you don't end up in a situation where you've got way too much debt. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.